And here we are. It's time again for some more Got Hockey. I've got Brad Johnson again from Brian's. We're here to walk through something new. All brand new Optik 4 has hit the scene. How you doing, Brad? Let's talk a little bit about gear.
It's always a good afternoon when we can get our hands into brand new goalie gear.
So, Optic 4, of course, the fourth set in the series. I don't want to go too detail heavy with the core stuff that everybody really already knows and loves about it. Maybe let's start with a couple of things that are new.
We didn't drastically change it from the
Hmm.
three. As you mentioned, with the three different cores are still available. Some of the new things that are really, really kind of eye-catching. I'd say first talking about the adjustable shin cradle.
Yep.
Now your calf wrap has a couple of different settings, so it's adjustable. So you can raise and lower it based off where you really want that grip on the back of your calf. As we all know, all of our playing styles are different. Also, all of our body styles are different. Our body shapes
Yes.
are different. If you just have the one, sometimes we would do some customization where people would ask for, extended calf straps with longer elastic. Because if you had beefier calves, to get that grip but proper rotation. This adds even more customizability right out of the box. I have had some goaltenders who typically wanted that little bit longer, but with the ability to raise and lower it a little bit, they didn't need it. So it's
Hmm.
just a little customizability, which I think is really nice to have. We also upgraded, I don't know if I'd say upgraded, but we modified and changed the upper calf strap that's now coming stock. And what we did is we made it an elastic upper calf strap instead of an adjustable nylon strap.
Yeah.
We modified the padding on it a little bit as well. I can tell you right now, out of the gate, my pro college goaltenders who have tried it, they've all changed over to the new elastic one.
Oh
So,
yeah, that's got some good stretch.
so it really has some stretch, but it'll pop right back. And then obviously, the tighter you tighten it, the better it's going to be to hold your knee or hold your leg where you want it to hold. A couple other things while we're looking, I also can show you. You'll notice stock, no outer knee flap anymore.
Right.
So you can easily add that on the customizer. It is a customizable feature. There's no extra charge when you customize it that way, but aftermarket, you can order through your authorized dealer. Also, no bootstrap stock. So that also is something that's customizable. You do need to add it on the customizer. We've really kind of streamlined it to follow pretty much what the butterfly style goaltenders are going to.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned the young goalie problem, but and I don't know how you are with bootstraps, but I'm 50 going on 51 here pretty quick. And I don't use a bootstrap anymore, and I don't, and I don't need an upper calf strap I mentioned, but I also don't use the outer knee flaps anymore. So even us older and grayer goaltenders, if we try these things, they sometimes can be for us. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you have that conversation, and I see you online having that conversation with goalies all the time. It's like, well, I got to have this or I don't like that. And it's like, but have you really tried it? And if you've
Yeah.
tried it, does that mean once? Or like giving us legitimately 3 to 4 hours of ice time before you decide
Yeah.
something is or isn't for you?
Yeah. I think I'll be buried with bootstraps on and skate lace and skate lace toe ties.
That's skate
But
lace toe ties.
I love to try everything. I know when I get new stuff, I generally will try to order as close to stock. I have a few of my own key little things that Rio always remembers to put on my pads or my gloves. But yeah, there's a lot of those little things now that really do make the pad just function a little bit easier, function a little bit better, and it really does. It takes just the amount of time to try them and not try to and not just trying to implement those to the way you wore your stuff. It's almost try them, but try them the way they're meant to be worn. See how that feels. And yeah, generally, even while still in the store, I can end up converting some people.
And then also, it's good to mention with that upper calf strap, it's laced
Hmm.
in the same way our upper calf straps are. So if you're watching this and you're wearing our pads already and you really want that new upper calf strap, you can definitely order it and integrate
Right.
it into your current Brian's pad as long as you have those lace tabs in there. One of the other things I wanted to show you while we're showing, we did also extend the Primo to the inside of the boot for a little bit of added durability. Your traditional Optic pad goaltenders are gonna feel at home with this. We really kind of capitalized on everything that has really worked, but made some customizable and changeable features in there to add a little bit of customizability, increase performance a little bit. It's still a very light pad, roughly around 4 pounds ish. Still got the one piece knee block on it. We beefed up that knee block. If you haven't worn a Brian's pad in a little while, you'll notice our knee block is plenty beefy, plenty thick. You get a really good seal with this pad when you're down in that butterfly.
Can we maybe
So
highlight, just for anyone who's really not sure, can we maybe highlight a little bit the three chassis, if we want to call them that, the three builds, Fly and Flex and Max?
internally, we have this discussion every year, especially also about the flex core. And so I'll start there where we don't do a lot of flex cores with this pad. The reason being the difference between our iconic line, which used to be our genetic line previously. If you didn't see our chat last year about the new iconic, that's what we call our hybrid butterfly pad, which has internal brakes. It has brakes within the core of the pad to add flexibility to it. The Optic is a single core. There's no brakes
Yeah.
within the core. And so it's really that pad is designed for your more pure butterfly goaltender who wants more rigidity. The flex core it breaks down to be a pretty soft pad. That flex core is really for a hybrid style butterfly goalie who still
Yeah.
wants the Optic pad. And so that's why we've kept it available. And again, for Brian's, considering ourselves the custom company, we want to offer something for as many goaltenders with our products as we possibly can. Otherwise, we wouldn't still do the flex score because that would be like, hey, if you want a really soft pad, our iconic line's really what you want to look at,
Hmm.
where we have multiple core options on that as well. But with the Optic, that's more for our pure butterfly goaltenders. So a more rigid, stiffer core is really what they're looking for. So the flex we've left in the line just for that goaltender specifically that really wants a little bit of a thinner core, but really wants a softer pad. And that's what our flex core is. And so that's a much smaller group of goaltenders, but we don't want to alienate that goaltender that still wants the Optic line but really doesn't want a really rigid or stiffer pad. Then when you get to the Fly and the Max are the exact same rigidity, but the Max has a pre-curve to it where the Fly is a much straighter pad. So again, it's really determining what your style is as a goaltender and how you play in the butterfly, what your butterfly looks like when you go down. Because if you don't have a more open or wide butterfly and you go with the Fly core, you may struggle a little bit closing the top of the pads.
I am definitely a Max,
Me too.
absolutely with everything. I love that shape. I love a really, like, again, the rigidity. So the pad is not moving, but I want the pad already bent into the position I want it to be when I land. And I know I've shown a little bit of video of it, of myself in them, and I gotta say, I think I look like a pretty sick goalie out there when I when I'm wearing the
Look good,
good
play good.
stuff. Yeah. Maybe let's move on to the catcher because I know we got some
Yep.
excitement going on there. I think I think sometimes when you compare the genetic now iconic line to the Optic is sort of like a bit of a longer shaped glove, and sometimes a guy with a smaller hand maybe has a little tougher time, and the glove can feel a little bit stiff because of it. But I know definitely the samples that I saw and our inventory that we just got in, the few sets that we have, all seem to have a little bit of a smoother close. Even like I said, even for someone who might not have the biggest hand. So maybe we'll start there with the glove.
That's actually a great setup because with the Optic, everything you just said is true. Where if you have a if you have a smaller hand, shorter, not as long of fingers, it was harder with the Optik 3 specifically. It was harder for you to get your hand into that glove and keep it over the closure unless you had a bigger mitt. And even with the intermediate internal, that's designed to hold your hand in place if you have a smaller hand to
Yeah.
try to keep the break of your hand over that glove. But it wasn't as effective as it is in our iconic line.
Yeah.
Um, and with this glove, and that was one of our chief focuses of redesigning this glove, Rio really did a great job of redesigning that top part of the glove.
Hmm.
So it allows where your hand goes in, that you can get your hand over that break and hold it over that break more. So it's so much easier to close if you have smaller hands. And I do. I'm an intermediate internal guy myself. And the Optik 3 was really hard for me to get that fit that I wanted because
Yeah.
my hand doesn't fit as a senior glove ideally. And that was a chief focus where obviously keeping the same break angle, keeping that same shape of the Optic glove, but making it so you can get your hand into the glove over that break so the closure is a lot easier to get that full closure. Using as an example, we have a number of goaltenders that you have seen that the Optic 3 was popular with a lot of goaltenders, but we had a lot of goaltenders that were in the Optic line that stayed in the Optic 2 because the Optic 3 they didn't feel like they could get as complete of a closure.
Sure.
All those goaltenders have switched to the Optic 4 and are very happy with it. I think I mentioned to you on the last call, I want to tell all of our goalies out there, and I sound like a broken record when I say this, but I've been with Brian since 2014. One of the things I love about our company is our design team is a group of 5 of us that meet
Yeah.
regularly, and that includes us on the retail field, it includes us on the pro side, and every bit of feedback we get from our consumers comes out in our design meetings. And so every Brian's goaltender, when you communicate something to us, something you like or you weren't so ecstatic about, that's on the table when we design our products. And I think that
Yeah.
the Optic 4, this is a good example of that, where the Optic 3, we had some feedback on it that they were having a harder time getting their hand into that glove and getting that closure they wanted, directly addressed in the Optic 4. And the Optic 4, like I said, those goaltenders that they've moved into the Optic 4 that weren't necessarily as crazy about the Optic 3. We did open up the cuff a little bit more, and we're going to talk about that on the blocker side as well.
It's really good. I know, like I said, where I'm constantly customizing stuff and looking at different things that I want to do. I almost sometimes get torn because I've had good success in the genetic line. I've had good success, with my optics, the ones I'm currently wearing right now. And I mean, all the way back to like to beast pads. So I mean, it's always fun that way. So it's really great when you get your hand in it first and you go, oh, this is yeah, wow, this is really something. So definitely excited to get a chance to get out there and start
So
wearing it.
yeah, moving on to the blocker. Same bevel board design that we had in the
Mhm.
previous version. So it's a thinner, real rigid blocker board. One thing I do want to mention, we are still using the Bri core in the pad, which is our composite material in the thigh rise to make it more rigid and to hold that rigidity in the thigh rise. We moved to Bri fuse in our blocker and our catch glove in the cuff. The Bri Fuse is a polycarbonate instead of a composite material, and it's actually fused to the top layer of foam instead of epoxied. The Bri-Core was great, and it added rigidity, it added more pop to the blocker face, but it is a very thin composite material, and the kind of impacts that you're seeing, we did see some breakage in the Bri-Core. And when I say breakage, I don't mean warranties. You as a goaltender probably never noticed it and didn't know, and it's
Right.
still working for you fine. But when we open up the glove, because it's epoxied with glue, there was some give to it, and we would see a little bit of cracking sometimes in it.
Okay.
This new polycarbonate material that we've now fused, we have tested extensively, and it is more durable than the composite material. Same weight, there's no change in the weight. You're not going to notice any difference. You're going to get great pop. It's just a longevity over time of the life of the blocker. The Bri Fuse is going to perform a little bit better for you. Still have the bindingless thumb. One of the biggest changes that's been met with a lot of success and a lot of happiness from goaltenders is that open cuff. So this
Yeah.
cuff is more open. It doesn't have the pull across to restrict that openness. So if you like it really tight, you still got the dial to tighten that up if you need to. But
Yes.
we wanted to make that cuff more open so it's a lot easier to present out.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more, as we say, there's constant evolution and styles of goaltending and everything else. We are seeing more goaltenders presenting out with their glove and blocker. And if you don't have that open cuff, it's a little bit more restricted of how you can do that. And this way, it's
Yes.
really
Yeah.
comfortable and easy to present with that open cuff to be able to roll forward to get that extra ability to get that and present that blocker out in front.
Well, one thing I will say, if as you start using the customizer or you see some pairs out there in the world, a really large, bold graphic without a lot of color zones. So there's basically four main color zones that control large parts of the graphic that go across the whole blocker, the whole pad, the whole glove. So without having like the eight or nine or more in the cases of some models and some pads, whether it be one of yours or somebody else's, this is a really sort of a really sort of full looking pad where you sort of have like a top bottom, you have a bit of that graphic through the middle. So without sort of having to really like sort of mix everything up, it really, I think it really stands out nicely.
It's a great graphic. I mean, and you can look at we've got a couple guys in the NHL, right, that had created their own brand with their graphics in Carl Veg and Igor, obviously, and they're both in our stock graphic this year so far. So
Yeah.
they both loved it and felt good in it. Felt like it presented the colors they wanted, and the way they wanted it in a in a how shall you say, in an aggressive way, but again, everything that you just said, it can be as basic as you want it. You can add some depth to it if you really want to, but without going crazy and having 20 color zones. And I mean, I again, like going back to the Optic 3, you either loved it or you hated it, right? We got some feedback with that. Everybody talked about it looking like Transformers and all that stuff, and it's like, yeah, we had lots of other goaltenders that absolutely loved it, and I'm
Yep.
still doing Optic 4s with graphic exchange, the Optic 3 for people who really loved the Optic 3
Hmm.
graphics. So you're never gonna create a graphic that everybody's got an
No.
opinion, everybody's gonna bag on something, and that's fine. But I think, like, again, going back to our design team, we don't just throw stuff at the wall and see if it sticks and be like, well, it's really the product, the graphic doesn't matter. And again, everybody makes good stuff, not to talk about any other brand specifically, but I think it's obvious that we don't just throw graphics on pads and hope people are going to
Hmm.
respond well to it. They go through
Yes.
multiple versions. We test it. We have test audience. We put a lot of time into our stock graphics before we etch them in stone as the stock graphic that's going to be offered to our end users.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's going to be great. I like the way it turns out. Even if you're just doing something very simple, you can really get just even the smaller graphic pieces to stand out, or you can really contrast the larger areas really well. So
Mhm.
I think that's I think that's something that's really good. And you're right. You've got a couple of goalies. Veggie's been showing up everywhere this week, and you do really see that. You do really see that pad and that graphic really standing out. It's a good time with the launch. It's a good time for him to be up front facing a little bit. It was really cool to see for him.
Yeah, and Igor's got a couple of cool alternate graphic for their alternate jerseys, so you all will be seeing those on the games that they're wearing their alternate jerseys.
Yeah.
He did a great job. He did a great job of picking out a couple of really cool things as well. So that's always a fun part of the job, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Igor Shesterkin, not to be outdone.
Yeah, of course.
We'll see what happens. I have a my troll prediction of the year to all the Rangers fan out there is that John Tavares' contract ends and that money's getting spent on Igor Shesterkin in Toronto, and it makes everybody go a little bit crazy. I doubt it'll happen, but I can dream. The Leafs goaltending situation actually looks not too bad right now, so we'll see how that carries through the end of the year as long as everyone stays healthy.
But I love watching Leafs games and I love the passion of the fan base. And I was a huge fan of Felix Potvin when I was growing up, and I got a Potvin jersey hanging up. And but it's just it's fascinating also if you're not in it to just watch and see all of the what goes along with it. And
Oh
man, you
yeah.
look at that talent, like I don't blame you for being frustrated because they just can't seem to put it together regardless of the formula they try. It just hasn't worked.
No, exactly. And listen, we can go on and on about this.
Yeah,
Believe
yeah,
me,
yeah.
I've
Yeah,
done
yeah,
this.
yeah.
This occupies this sometimes will occupy a couple of hours worth
So
of my
let's do
day at the
your other
store.
we'll do your Leafs podcast
That's
sometime,
right.
right?
Yeah, I'll have to get that one
Like, let's
started.
do
Oh
that.
man. Yeah, because that's for sure. There definitely aren't enough people on the internet talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs. Maybe we need to add one more.
Yeah,
But listen, this is really great. I'm glad we had a chance to sit down and talk about the new great stuff with this Optic 4 line that's coming out. Brad, thanks again as always for joining me today. I can't wait to get my own set out on the ice as soon as that arrives and start pushing stuff out to goalies and get them out there making stops in this great new gear. Thanks again for joining me.
of course, my pleasure. Anytime. You know, and I want to address this in general, and this is kind of off topic a little bit, but wear on the thigh rises, right? And I'm sure you see this from customers all the time where the material in the inner thigh, upper top of the pad is wearing.
Those little
And some
corners.
goaltenders will, yep, at the top inside corners. And you'll see some goaltenders saying, oh, well, you know, why is it already wearing up there? And we know the way that the game is played now, and especially with pads with a little bit more rigidity and they're taller than they used to be when we played. The simple fact is when you're moving in the upright position, you're going to rub your thigh rises together,
Yeah.
which creates wear in there. And there simply is no such thing as indestructible synthetic leather materials.
Yes.
And but the reason why I'm bringing this into the conversation is if you get a pad that's too rigid or too tall, or say the fly core, which is a straighter pad, and you're moving a lot in the upright position, you're going to get some wear up there. And I
Yeah.
just want to prepare goaltenders to know that that's normal. It's
Yeah.
not a defect. Materials are what they are, they cannot
Yeah.
be indestructible. And when you take two pieces
Yeah.
of material and rub them together, what's going to happen? You're going to get
Yeah.
some wear up there.
Especially we're making the pad nice and square so that it drops right. We're making the pad nice and square so that it lands flat and comes together. It's also very
Seals.
rigid because we want the rigidity so that those flat, square, rigid banging together
Yeah.
that you're like you're saying like you will see sometimes those what look like those little nicks on those corners.
So I just
Hmm.
wanted to mention that because it is something that's common and we see it on social media all the time. And someday somebody will create an indestructible synthetic material. And once that happens, maybe there will be no such thing as wear in the thigh rises.
Yes.
But as of right
Skate
now,
cut
there's but
resistant as
yeah,
well.
yeah.